안녕하세요.
The city of Seoul never slept, and the Han Group skyscraper shone on the horizon like a monument to power and ambition. Inside the company's imposing headquarters, Han Ji-hoon, the youngest son of the Han dynasty, sat at the enormous conference table while his father, Han Jung-woo, coldly analyzed the reports in front of him. His older brothers were aligned around the room, each representing a different facet of the Han Empire. Ji-hoon had always known that proving his competence would be an uphill battle. Tae-jun, the eldest, was the natural heir, groomed for leadership from a young age. Min-seok, the third brother, was a born strategist, skilled in finance and the political games of the company. Do-hyun, the second brother, charismatic and ambitious, had a natural talent for winning people over. And Ji-hoon, despite being intelligent and innovative, was always seen as the youngest son protected by his father. That morning, Jung-woo made an announcement that would completely change Ji-hoon's trajectory. From today, you will all compete for the position of CEO. I want to see who is truly worthy of leading this company. Silence filled the room. None of the older brothers seemed surprised. They had been expecting this moment. But Ji-hoon felt the weight heavier than ever. He had less experience, less support, and his own father did not show complete confidence in him. In the midst of his unease, Ji-hoon found a familiar and reassuring gaze. Yoon Ha-yoon, his secretary and right-hand woman, stood by the door holding her clipboard. Her eyes said it all. You can do this. Since she had started working with him, Ha-yoon had been the only person who always supported him unconditionally. Later, as Ji-hoon walked through the company corridor, Ha-yoon approached, noticing his tension. Don't let them intimidate you, sir. You have what it takes to win this competition. Ji-hoon sighed, leaning against the wall. Easy for you to say. I'm not like Tae-jun, Min-seok, or Do-hyun. They have years of experience and know how to play the political game. I'm still seen as the spoiled kid. Ha-yoon smiled slightly. And that's why you can be different. You can be the leader this company needs, not just a reflection of your father. As he reflected on her words, Ji-hoon received another unexpected piece of news. His father had called for a family dinner that evening, but not just among themselves. The Kang family, owners of the giant Kang Corp, would also be present. The reason? An arranged engagement. Ji-hoon looked at his father in disbelief when the news was revealed. Father, this can't be serious. Jung-woo crossed his arms, his expression firm. The marriage between our family and the Kangs will ensure Han Group's stability. You will do this for the company. Kang Se-ra, the designated fiancée, sat calmly at the table in the luxurious restaurant. She was elegant, reserved, and undoubtedly an impressive woman. But to Ji-hoon, she was a stranger. While their parents chatted enthusiastically, trying to seal their fate, Ji-hoon could barely pay attention. Hours later, Ji-hoon and Se-ra walked outside the restaurant, alone for the first time. You don't have to pretend to like me, Han Ji-hoon, she said, crossing her arms. I know you don't want this marriage, just as I don't. Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. Then why are you accepting it so passively? Se-ra gave a small smile. Because that's what's expected of us. But that doesn't mean I'm happy about it. As he returned home that night, Ji-hoon realized what was ahead of him. The competition for the Han Group throne was already difficult enough, but now he had to deal with a forced engagement and conflicting feelings. What he didn't yet know was that his greatest battle would not be against his brothers or his father's wishes, but against his own heart. The city of Seoul shimmered with its vibrant lights, but for Han Ji-hoon, the night felt darker than ever. The announcement of his arranged marriage not only caught him off guard, but also placed him in a dilemma he couldn't ignore. If he accepted, he would be giving up the little autonomy he had over his own destiny. If he refused, he would face his father's wrath and lose any chance of proving his worth as the successor of Han Group. Back in his office, Ji-hoon leaned back in his leather chair, massaging his temples. He needed a plan. Just then, the door slowly opened and Yoon Ha-yoon entered, holding some documents. You're still here, sir? She asked hesitantly. Ji-hoon looked up, surprised. You too? I thought you had already gone home. Ha-yoon gave a soft smile. Someone has to make sure the Han Group's heir doesn't collapse under pressure. She placed the papers on his desk and crossed her arms. Do you want to talk about what happened today? Ji-hoon let out a deep sigh. Not much to say. My father wants me to marry Kang Se-ra. To him, I'm just another piece on the chessboard. Ha-yoon hesitated for a moment before saying, "And what do you want?" Ji-hoon stared at her. It was a simple question, yet he didn't have an easy answer. His instincts told him to reject the arrangement, but logic reminded him that his position in the company was still unstable. He couldn't just act on impulse. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know that I can't let this decision stop me from achieving my goal. I need to win this competition." Ha-yoon observed him closely. "Then use this to your advantage. Show your father that you can be more than just an obedient heir." The next morning, Ji-hoon walked into Han Group's headquarters with renewed purpose. His brothers were already gathered in the conference room, their gazes filled with challenge. Their father sat at the head of the table, watching them all with meticulous attention. "The competition starts now," Han Young-woo announced, his voice firm and authoritative. "Each of you will have the opportunity to lead key projects in the company. Whoever excels will earn my consideration for succession." The brothers exchanged calculating glances. Han Tae-jun smirked condescendingly. "So we'll finally see if our youngest sibling has what it takes to be a leader." Do-hyun let out a low chuckle. "Or if he still needs our shadow to guide him." Ji-hoon kept his expression serious. He knew nothing would be easy, but if he had any chance at all, he needed to prove himself through results. He wasn't there to ask for recognition, he was there to earn it. After the meeting, Ji-hoon met with Ha-yoon again. "I need you now more than ever," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. She raised an eyebrow. "And why do you think I'd take on that burden?" Ji-hoon smiled, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "Because you're the only one who truly believes in me, and I'll need that to face what's coming." The power struggle had begun, and Ji-hoon was ready to fight for what was his. But he still didn't know that his greatest challenges wouldn't just come from his brother's set, would also come from his own heart. The Han Group headquarters buzzed with energy as employees prepared for the newly announced projects by the family patriarch. Han Ji-hoon felt the weight of responsibility as he read through reports in his office. His first challenge had arrived, leading a market expansion for one of the company's most profitable sectors. This was his chance to prove he was worthy of the position he so desired. The phone on his desk rang, interrupting his thoughts. Without taking his eyes off the documents, he answered, "Speak." "Sir, your brother Do-hyun has called for an emergency meeting with the logistics team. It seems he plans to present his proposal before you do," said Yoon-ha, Yoon's concerned voice. Ji-hoon closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. Of course he does. He always likes to act first. "What are you going to do?" Ha-yoon asked, hesitation evident in her voice. Ji-hoon stood up, grabbing his jacket. "Let's see if he actually has something innovative, or if this is just a move to sabotage me. Meet me in the conference room in 10 minutes. In the conference room, the company's executives were gathered, attentively listening to Do-hyun's presentation. The second Hansen exuded his usual confidence, gesturing as he displayed impressive projections for a new distribution strategy. Ji-hoon entered quietly and positioned himself at the back of the room, listening carefully to every word. Once Do-hyun finished his presentation, the questions began. Some directors seemed satisfied, while others still pondered the risks involved. Before any final decision could be made, Ji-hoon cleared his throat and stood up. "My brother's proposal is interesting, but there are some flaws we need to consider." All eyes turned to him. Do-hyun raised an eyebrow, clearly irritated by the interruption. "Ah, Ji-hoon, I'm glad you could join us. Is there something about my strategy that concerns you?" Ji-hoon smiled, but his eyes were sharp. "Yes. The plan focuses solely on expansion without considering long-term operational costs. This could negatively impact cash flow. I have an alternative that can minimize these risks while ensuring more stable profits." The executives exchanged glances, intrigued. One of the senior directors, Mr. Choi, leaned forward. "We'd like to hear your proposal, Ji-hoon. Do you have something prepared?" Ji-hoon glanced at Ha-yoon, who gave him a small smile and handed him a tablet with the necessary data. He took a deep breath and began presenting his strategy. For 20 minutes, he outlined his approach, highlighting the weaknesses in Do-hyun's plan and offering more viable solutions. By the end of the presentation, the room was silent. Then, one by one, the directors started murmuring among themselves. Mr. Choi nodded, satisfied. Ji-hoon brought up valid points we hadn't considered. We need to reassess this approach before making a final decision. Do-hyun pressed his lips together, visibly frustrated. Ji-hoon, however, remained composed. He knew this was just the first of many battles he would have to fight. Later in his office, Ha-yoon placed a cup of coffee on his desk. "You were incredible in there." Ji-hoon chuckled softly. "It wasn't enough. I still have a long way to go." Ha-yoon watched him with warmth, but before she could respond, the door swung open, and Kang Se-ra walked in without warning. "We need to talk, Han Ji-hoon. Now." Her expression was serious, and at that moment, Ji-hoon knew something big was about to happen. Han Ji-hoon kept an impassive expression as he stared at Kang Se-ra. The daughter of the Kang Corp president rarely appeared without a solid reason, and from the urgency in her eyes, he knew this wasn't a casual visit. "Can we talk?" Se-ra asked, her voice firm yet laced with restrained emotion. Ji-hoon gestured for her to sit while Yoon Ha-yoon, hesitant, gathered the papers from his desk and discreetly stepped away. No matter how indispensable she was to Ji-hoon, he knew that Se-ra wanted to speak without any witnesses. Se-ra placed her purse on the table, crossed her legs, and took a deep breath. "I know you don't want this engagement any more than I do, so let's be direct." Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what's your proposal?" She leaned slightly forward. "If our fathers think they can manipulate us like chess pieces, let's show them we know how to play better. What do you say to pretending we agree with this marriage for now? It will buy us time to each carve our own path." Ji-hoon chuckled, crossing his arms. "So your idea is to buy time until we find a convenient way out for both of us? What if our parents find out?" Se-ra smirked. "Do you really think I haven't been dodging their expectations my entire life? What matters is that we both want the same thing, independence. So why not help each other?" Ji-hoon pondered for a moment. The proposal was clever. He needed time to consolidate his position within Han Group, and a forced engagement could become a hindrance. But there was another factor, Ha-yoon. The more he pretended to have a relationship with Se-ra, the further he would be from the woman who truly stirred his emotions. Se-ra noticed his hesitation. "Don't worry. I'm not the type of woman who will cry over a loveless marriage. I'm offering you a deal, not a trap." Ji-hoon sighed. "Fine. But that means we have to act well. We need to convince our parents and the media that we are committed." Se-ra smiled, satisfied. "Leave that to me. I know exactly how to make it look convincing." The next day, headlines were flooded with the official engagement announcement between the heirs of Han Group and Kang. Photos of the couple smiling at a private dinner circulated, and rumors spread like wildfire. Ji-hoon knew this was just another move in a much bigger game. But while he handled the consequences of this arrangement, there was one person who didn't know how to react. Yoon Ha-yoon. She watched the news with a tight feeling in her chest. Ji-hoon's smile in the photos was calculated, but that didn't stop the pain from growing inside her. For years she had stood by his side, believing she knew every facet of his being. But now, he seemed to be slipping away, and Ha-yoon didn't know if it was just an illusion or a reality she needed to accept. Do-hyun noticed Ha-yoon's unease and approached her. "Are you okay?" She blinked a few times, trying to push away her thoughts. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" Do-hyun smiled slightly, but his gaze was understanding. "You don't have to pretend with me. I know this isn't easy for you." Ha-yoon sighed and looked away. "I just didn't expect it to happen so fast." Do-hyun nodded. "Life in this world never gives us time to prepare. But if you ever need someone, I'm here." She looked up at him, and for the first time, she noticed something different in Do-hyun's gaze, something she had never seen before, something that could change everything. The days passed like a whirlwind. Since the announcement of Ji-hoon and Se-ra's engagement, expectations for the couple had grown. At every social event, every business meeting, all eyes were on them, and Ji-hoon, with his impeccable posture, played the role of a devoted fiancé well. But inside, something felt off, as if each smile for the cameras was merely a shadow of what he truly felt. Yoon Ha-eun, on the other hand, maintained her composure within the company. She was still the efficient and indispensable secretary to Ji-hoon, but now there was a distance between them that hadn't existed before. She avoided looking into his eyes for too long, kept their conversations strictly professional, and ignored the murmurs of the staff about how painful it must be for her to work so close to the man she supposedly loved. Do-hyun noticed every detail, always observant of Ha-yoon's expressions. He saw how her smiles were restrained and how her hands trembled slightly when organizing Ji-hoon's documents. It bothered him more than he cared to admit. One evening, after a charity event where Ji-hoon and Sira were celebrated as the perfect couple, Ha-yoon decided to leave work later than usual. She needed some time alone, away from the pressure and emotions she had been suppressing. As she walked down the empty corridor, Do-hyun appeared, leaning against the wall beside her. "You're going to exhaust yourself like this, Ha-yoon," he said, his voice low and gentle. She sighed, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine, Do-hyun. I just need some time." He frowned. Lying to others is bad enough. Lying to yourself is even worse. Ha-yoon crossed her arms, feeling the emotional barrier crack slightly. "What do you want me to say? That it hurts? That seeing Ji-hoon and Sira together is tearing me apart inside? I've already accepted that I never belonged in his world." Do-hyun stepped closer, lightly touching her shoulder. "And why do you insist on believing that? He may be a Han, but that doesn't mean his heart is already sold. You're stronger than you think." Before she could respond, Ji-hoon appeared in the corridor. His eyes immediately locked onto Do-hyun's hand on Ha-yoon's shoulder, and for a moment, irritation flickered across his expression. "Ha-yoon, I need to talk to you," Ji-hoon said, his voice firm. Ha-yoon hesitated, looking between the two brothers. Do-hyun gave a half smile and stepped back. "I suppose our conversation can wait, but remember what I said." Ji-hoon watched Do-hyun leave before turning to Ha-yoon. "You've been avoiding talking to me." She swallowed hard. "I'm just trying to do my job without complications." He sighed, crossing his arms. "And pretending nothing has changed between us is part of that job? Ha-yoon, I know this has been difficult for you. It's been difficult for me too." Ha-yoon shook her head. "No, it hasn't, Ji-hoon. You have Sera. You have your family. Everything is working out for you. I'm just someone who needs to keep my position and move on." Ji-hoon stepped closer, gently holding her arm. "You have never been just someone, Ha-yoon. I don't know how to fix all of this yet, but I do know that I don't want to lose you." Her heart pounded, but before she could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Sera appeared, her gaze fixing on the scene before her. The silence was heavy with tension. Silence lingered in the corridor. Sera looked at Ji-hoon and Ha-yoon with an unreadable expression, her gaze shifting between surprise and understanding. Ji-hoon slowly let go of Ha-yoon's arm, but the tension in the air remained thick. "Sera," Ji-hoon began, but she interrupted with a controlled smile. "You don't need to explain, Ji-hoon," Sera said, crossing her arms. "I knew something was different about you. Maybe it took me too long to realize it, but now everything makes sense." Ha-yoon lowered her gaze, feeling out of place. "I need to get back to work," she said quickly, trying to step away. But Ji-hoon grabbed her hand, his expression serious. "Wait, Ha-yoon," he said. "Sera, I know this complicates things, but I can't keep pretending this engagement makes sense. I should never have accepted it." Sera took a deep breath and looked at Ha-yoon. "And you?" she asked. "What do you feel about this?" Ha-yoon hesitated. She knew what she felt for Ji-hoon, but she also knew the consequences of following her heart. "It doesn't matter." Ji-hoon frowned. "Of course it matters. You matter to me." Sera sighed and let out a short, humorless laugh. "It's funny how fate plays with us. I never wanted this engagement, but when I saw how everyone accepted us as the perfect couple, I started wondering if maybe it could work. But you never looked at me the way you look at her." Ji-hoon didn't respond. He didn't need to. Sera already knew the truth. She looked at him one last time and shook her head. "Don't worry. I'll handle this with our parents. But I hope you understand that by choosing Ha-yoon, you're going against everything your father wants." Ji-hoon nodded. "I know, and I'm ready to face it." Sera cast one final glance at Ha-yoon before walking away down the corridor, her posture impeccable, but her heart clearly weighed down by rejection. Once they were alone, Ha-yoon pulled her hand away from Ji-hoon. "This doesn't change anything," she said, her voice trembling. "Your father will never allow you to be with me. Your family will never accept this." Ji-hoon took a step forward, determined. Then I'll fight for us. No matter what happens, I won't give up on you. Ha-yoon closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back tears. What if I don't want you to fight? Ji-hoon remained silent, feeling the pain behind her words. If that's truly what you want, then look me in the eyes and tell me. Ha-yoon lifted her gaze, but before she could say anything, Do-yoon appeared at the end of the corridor. He observed them, his expression filled with conflicting emotions. I think we have a bigger problem to deal with, Do-hyun said. Our father wants to talk to you, Ji-hoon, now. Ji-hoon's heart tightened. He knew this moment would come. Now he would have to face his greatest obstacle, Han Young-woo himself.
You're my eternal